Well, we started this series last week. It's not over. Ramin did a great job of talking about how comebacks, wanting to come back from the tough stuff in our lives, the difficult things that happen in our lives, always comes with a bit of pain. That comebacks aren't easy, but God's story from Genesis all the way to the end of the book of Revelation, all the way through the Bible, is a series of stories about comebacks, about how people do that in their lives, the things that they experience. And so last week, Ramin talked about coming back from regrets, and today we're going to talk about coming back from loss, and next week, addiction, and then rejection, and then broken families. And I suppose we could have a series that goes all the way to the end of the year, because there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of things we'd like to see come back. Now, winter's been trying to make a comeback this week. That seems like holy cow, this is April, let's get on with it. But some comebacks for us require some focus on our part and aren't easy for us to do. They're a challenge for us. And Ramin is right. There's always some pain involved in that comeback. You know, I love some of the words that Jesus spoke, the words of encouragement, words of challenge. Some of my favorite words of encouragement, probably out of Matthew chapter 11, when Jesus said such simple words like this: "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." I love this idea that there is a sense of rest, and God wants to help me carry the burdens, the heaviness we feel. Or when we get weary, God invites us to rest. Or John chapter 8, when he said, "I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." I love the idea that God is saying to us, I want to be a light in your path in the dark moments of your life. When there is not much light, I want to bring light into those dark moments. Encouraging words, strengthening words. Some of the words of Jesus I find challenging, inviting me to do something I don't necessarily want to do. "Let your light shine before men, that they might see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." There are some times when the last thing I want to do are like good deeds. Yesterday, I was driving down the road to meet Diane and our kids for breakfast, and I got behind somebody who'd been out mudding in their Jeep, and I didn't know, and they started throwing mud, and it was like smacking off my car and on my windshield, and I was like not happy about it. I kept trying to catch up to the guy to ask him if he was going to go with me to the car wash to get this thing clean out, and the last thing I wanted to do was let any light shine on him at that moment. I was not happy. Jesus said this to his followers: "As much as you've done for one of the least of these my brothers, you've done this to me." I don't like those words either, really. Because I want to land in that camp that says there's so many big deal things going on around the world that I can't possibly help those. But here's what I will do. I'll send some dollars to some of those places, those agencies, those people that do some good stuff. I want to support that. I want to encourage that. But for me to actually want to have to get involved, I don't always want to do that. Because the biblical reminder is this: just because I can't do everything doesn't mean I don't do something. And Jesus said, for whatever you've done for one person who's on the outside looking in, you've done that same thing to me. I get challenged by those words. I suppose if I'm being completely frank, there's some of Jesus' words that seem like unexplainable to me, kind of almost silly to me. Like perplexing. For example, Matthew chapter 5, he says this: "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are experiencing some of the worst stuff that life has to offer. They're blessed. Blessed are people whose lives have been completely flipped on end. They are in a great spot. They are blessed. Blessed are you whose heart is being ripped right out of your chest right now. You're blessed. You know, Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine. I think maybe right before he spoke these words, he was practicing for that miracle. Because this does not, from my perspective, these words are silly words. Blessed are those who mourn. You're blessed. But here's the issue. Well, from my perspective, they don't make much sense. Jesus is often not speaking from my perspective. He's inviting me to see something different that I am not always wanting to see. He's actually holding the glass up and he's turning it for me. He's saying, hey, there's a better story. There's a better picture. I want you to see this better picture. Blessed are those who mourn. How is it you're blessed when life is so messy, so discomforting? How can you be blessed? Well, first of all, blessed doesn't mean happy. We want it to mean happy. We want this word to say, you are happy when these things are going on. You're like, here's how you can be happy. And we want happiness, don't we? I mean, all of us want to be happy. It's in our Bill of Rights. We're guaranteed we should be happy. You should get to be happy. And happiness is almost always based on what? On our happenings. And if things are going good, we are happy. If life is smooth, we are smiling. We want to be happy. We deserve to be happy. We've earned the right to be happy. And when we're not happy, we're going to do whatever we have to do to be happy. But life steps on our happy meals a lot, doesn't it? And happiness is no guarantee for us. Blessed doesn't mean happy. It does not mean things are okay. They're going well. Being blessed doesn't mean there aren't some difficulties, there aren't some storms, there aren't winds blowing. Blessed does not mean that all the seas are calm, that the path is smooth, that the way is straight, that there's plenty of light. Being blessed doesn't mean those things. Blessed is deeper than that. Jesus is trying to get me past the surface stuff of my life and take me deeper to the core, tunnel down to the core of who I am. Being blessed is this sense of deep-seated peace that comes from someplace not my own. Being blessed is something where I'm anchored even in the midst of a storm. There's something deeper, bigger going on in the turmoil. You see, the blessings of Jesus have nothing to do with the chances of life. But they have everything to do with the choices in life. This idea of being blessed are those who mourn. Jesus is saying this, blessed are those who get to the end of themselves, because it's at the end of themselves you find the beginning of me. Blessed are those who find themselves in a position that they can't fix their stuff. Blessed are those who are in a spot where they are dependent on something beyond their own ability. Because when you get to that spot, Jesus says, you are blessed because God can get engaged. One theologian describing these Beatitudes, these blessed passages, says this: God helps those who help themselves. And he helps those who try to help others. But he does not in any beatitude help those who think they need no help. Blessed are you when you get to the end of you. When you're in a spot of dependence. Blessed are those, Jesus said, who mourn. Sometimes our day will start like any other day. And then that phone call comes. And a loved one is gone. Happened to one of our longtime members, Maxine Wagner, whose service Tim said is tomorrow. And I'll miss Maxine. Walk in the lobby every weekend I've come in here for my entire time. She's been that big smile behind the counter, such an encouragement. We'll miss her. She's gone. Or that tragic accident that's even more unsettling. Or the routine exam that shows an unaccounted growth, or worse, when they say, there really isn't anything more we can do for you. Or the job you counted on that's now gone, or the romance that breaks up, or the teenager that runs away, or the divorce papers that get served. Started like any other day, and then this tidal wave hits us. There's a long list of things that we grieve over, a long list of things that bring mourning into our lives. We were at breakfast yesterday with our kids, our granddaughters, and one of them started crying as we were putting food on the plates because somehow bacon hadn't quite made it over late. And I remember her dad said, "Hey, Bria, you don't cry over bacon." But Sparky, there are some things you do cry over. There are some stuff in life worth crying about. There are some tragedies that happen. There are disappointments that come. There are heartaches, and none of us in this room are exempted from that. We're not promised some free ride. We're not promised this easy, free bubble life that somehow we're going to be protected. In fact, Jesus said this, in the world you're going to have trouble, but take heart because I've overcome the world. We're almost guaranteed that we're going to experience some of the tough stuff of life. And when grief comes, it can be like this wave breaking over us, and we live under this cloud, and That Greek word for mourning here, blessed are those who mourn, is the strongest word in the biblical language for that heart-wrenching, soul-aching experience we have. This isn't about some irritation or disappointment or frustration, the little bit of minor grief we get. This is that grief that goes to the very core of our souls. And the biblical idea of mourning carries this with it. There is mourning from a biblical perspective for what's wrong in the world. When you look at a number of places in the Bible, there was this kind of overall mourning for what's busted in the world. And when you watch the news today, it's hard not to mourn for what's going on. Just this morning, again, reports out of Nigeria where Boko Haram is absolutely trying to eliminate all the 70 million Christians in Nigeria. Our hearts should break for that. There's a biblical sense of mourning over loss of some sort, like a death of a dream, maybe a business opportunity or some venture we're after, or something that doesn't quite work out like we want it to work out. There is a sense of mourning. There is a biblical sense of mourning about our sin, our guilt, our remorse, our sorrow for what we've done wrong. And then this idea of mourning is also this death of somebody close to us. A parent, a child, a spouse, a friend. And some of you are in the midst of that now. And some of you are just coming out of that journey through grief, and it's an inescapable part of the human experience. None of us are exempted. And if you're grieving now, you have something in common with millions and millions of other people. It is a common human experience, but you also have something in common with Jesus himself, who grieved the loss of a friend, grieved the disappointment, a heartache of what some of his followers were doing, grieved over the people of Israel who were so far away from God, grieved over what he would be experiencing on the cross. As I've watched people grieve, there are lots of categories about the stages of grief. There are 6 steps or 7 steps or 4 things. I want to kind of broad stroke them for you. 3 things that I think we go through when we are experiencing mourning or loss. The first is this kind of shock or surprise that happens. We can't believe this is happening to us. We are totally caught off guard. And with that is a sense of numbness that happens. And we go through this denial part that somehow this isn't me, or it didn't happen to our family, or the doctor was wrong, or we should find something different, or maybe that phone call or that police showing up at our step didn't happen the way we thought it did. There is that sense of denial in that shock and surprise. And here's what often happens. Some of us who watch friends go through something will see them and will make these statements. They're doing so well. It's been a few weeks, or it's been a few days, or it's been a few months, and they seem to be doing so well. And the truth is they're not really doing well. They are just numb at this point. Then there is that stage of struggle. We get angry. Angry at ourselves, angry at the circumstances. If it's the loss of a loved one, sometimes we even get angry with them, the person that's gone. The anxiety, depression, the can't hardly seem to function that happens for us in the midst of grief. That helpless and hopeless spot. And then there is a place where stability starts. It doesn't come fast. It's not always easy. And these aren't 1, 2, 3 kinds of things. It's like a roller coaster where we kind of weave our way in and out. But eventually we move more and more to a place where, while we recognize that life is not going to be the same, how can it be? That life does go on, and there is hope. There is comfort. Blessed are those who mourn, Jesus said, for they will be comforted. There is comfort in the midst of those storms. Here's how the Apostle Paul said it. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble. That word trouble in the Greek is the word thlipsis, and it means this. It was a picture of how they would often execute people or put people on a trial to determine whether they were guilty. They would place a heavy weight, like a big millstone, on their chest till it would crush the breath out of them, the very life out of them. That's what that word trouble means. That place where where these aren't minor troubles, where we feel like life is being squeezed out. And it's in that place that Paul says God will bring his comfort, and he uses us to help comfort others so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God, that God is going to go with us in this journey. The problem is, we get in the middle of some of those things, and we don't see God. In fact, we wonder if he went on vacation somewhere. He's not listening, he's not hearing, he doesn't see us. How would you answer this question? If God were God, he would what? Fill that blank in. If God were God, he would bring that person back, fix my marriage, help me get that job, resolve my finances, get me past this stuff. If God were God, he would heal my disease. What is it that he would do for us? And when he doesn't do that, when it doesn't happen like we think it should go, when we have trouble seeing anything happening in the way we believe it should happen, it just takes us further down a darker hole. And when we can't trace God's hand, we're being invited to trust his heart. That he's not leaving us alone on this journey. And what I've found in the darkest spots in my life have been that when I thought I was doing this by myself, when I look back, it was God who was actually carrying me through some of those hardest moments. When our kids were younger, one of the favorite things we used to do often on Sunday afternoons is we'd buzz up to Estes after church and we'd do some hike up there. And Diane and I were recently talking about we maybe should have planned our family different. We had the two boys close together. They were 18 months apart. And then it was 5 years to our daughter, Chelsea. And so we could never find family stuff that worked for us. You know, the boys were older and liked boy stuff, and Chelsea was younger and couldn't keep up and liked girl stuff. And so it was a constant struggle for us. But we would go hiking, and the boys were like blazing up the trail, and Chelsea at 2 or 3 couldn't keep up. And so we got one of those backpacks where we could put her, Diane thought that would be a wonderful idea. And we put her in this backpack, and we're hiking up those trails that are steep with no air, and Diane's with the boys, and I'm back. And then she would feed my daughter as well. She gave her graham crackers and juice and be like mashing in my hair and down my neck. And so I got to admit, it was a fairly miserable part of the trip for me. We'd get near the top, and we'd stop the boys, and we'd say, hey, your sister wants to get down. She's going to go with you. And so I'd get Chelsea out of the carrier, and it'd be 100 yards till we get to the summit or the top or the spot we were headed toward. And the boys would take off running, and those little legs of hers would try to keep up. And the boys would be up there high-fiving each other and slapping each other in the back. And Chelsea would catch her, and she'd start doing the same thing, dancing with them, throwing her hands up. And I'm lugging up the hill. I get up there, and I just want to whack her. Because she did not. I did it. No, you did not. You didn't. You did not do that. I did that. And some of us have hills to climb. And then there's a day we break through the clearing. I did it. I did it. And it was God who carried me through the hardest part. See, the biblical promise is not that you are going to be exempted from the junk of life. The biblical promise is that God is not going to let you do that by yourself. That he goes with us. And at some point, we get to the spot where there's a bit of clearing. We've crested the hill. We choose to move forward. And almost always right at that place, I watch people choose. Some choose to get better and to keep going, and some choose to get bitter. That the heartaches of life just pile up somehow. Don't waste the hurt. When our heart gets ripped out of our chest, don't waste that hurt. Your hurts aren't wasted on God. Our hurts shouldn't be wasted on us. We have a chance to do something different, to see different things happen. And certainly don't waste your hurt on others, because there are some of you in this room who've journeyed through some really hard things, and I've watched you in ways you didn't even realize were happening help others journey through their difficulties just because they see you making it, just because you've come alongside them, just because you've chosen to simply say, just keep going, just keep taking a step. There's another step. There's another step. Blessed are those who mourn, Jesus said, because they are in a place to reach for God who can comfort them. Some people seem to experience more heartache than others. I'm not sure exactly why or how that happens. She was no memory of her father. Doesn't recall meeting him, was told she'd met him one time. Her mom was an alcoholic. Her earliest childhood memory was when she was 4. She remembers she and her brother were taken with her mom to a bar, and closing time came, and mom was gone, had left with some guy, and left the 2 little kids to go home with a stranger, and that pattern repeated itself over and over. Eventually, she landed in foster care, kind of another family watching out, taking care of her. A lot of rough stuff when you are in the home of an alcoholic. A lot of you have experienced that. At 19, she literally decided to marry the boy next door, literally like next door. Both 19, both a lot of dysfunction in their families. Looking back, they would say, it might have been a way we escaped our situations. And then they did what young couples do. They tried to make a life for themselves and figure it out and sort it, and started having kids, and had a son and a daughter, and the next child, a little girl, died a month after birth, the next one at birth. And the third child, they carried 6 weeks, knowing it was already gone. Other stuff happens in life, disruptions with jobs and things and family stuff, a lot of normal things, but heartache. In a 6-month period, her best friend found out she had cancer in her 40s and died 3 weeks later. Her mom, who she had reconciled with, died, and her daughter, who was 18, was killed in a car accident. A friend of hers wrote her a letter a few years ago. Childhood friend, lifelong friend. How did you do this? How have you experienced so much ugliness, and yet you live with such joy? Is it your faith? Is it your friends, your family? And her response was, it's probably part of all of that. If I told you more of the story, it gets to the spot where it's like, well, that can't be true. The only reason I know it's true is because I met her. And not only did I meet her, it's my mom. You'll get to meet her. They're moving here in a couple of months. We're looking forward to that. And if you met her, you would not know the heartache she's had in her life. That would not be what you see when you first meet her. And she has journeyed with hundreds of other people through some of those valleys. Why? I think John captures it in Revelation chapter 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. And they will be his people. And God himself will be with them and be their God. And he'll wipe every tear from their eyes. And there'll be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. For the old order of things has passed away." It's not over.